and we bring in Jim Gazzale from the Legal Sports Report. He's sports betting and horse racing business news for Legal Sports Report. So, Jim, obviously big news out in Kentucky, Louisville, normally known for horse racing, but that's not the story of the day. Valhalla Golf Club and Scottie Scheffler become the number one sports story of the day unexpectedly.
Yeah, certainly. And, I think you guys touched on it pretty well off the top of the show. I could kind of just take you through the timeline of things as they transpired this morning with that fatal pedestrian accident right after 5 o'clock this morning. And then, at least according to reports, it seems like Scottie Scheffler, the number one golfer in the world, was trying to navigate around some traffic to get into the golf club to prep himself for the second round there. This morning, when he got into a little bit of a run-in with an officer there, he was ultimately arrested, detained, and then released and back on the course for his tee time. Now, a couple of the charges that he's facing: assault of a police officer, criminal mischief, reckless driving, disregarding traffic signals. That assault charge is a felony. What comes of this, Mike? I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. I have to imagine that the penalties for this will be relatively minor. I did reach out to a contact with the PGA this morning to see if there was anything additional that they could provide to me, and they declined to comment further, just deferring me to Scottie Scheffler's statement, where he said largely that this was a large misunderstanding. Now, on the betting side of this all, largely unchanged, at least according to the data that I was looking at this morning from BetMGM. Scheffler opened up pre-tournament at plus 750. Yesterday he moved to plus 450, and that line remained the same at plus 450 today, despite all of the action and of course that tragedy that happened outside of the golf club in Louisville this morning.
I appreciate your thoughts on that. Again, we're with Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report. You find him on X.com at Jim, Gazzale, Jim Gazzale. So let's move over to some of the things that you've written about recently. Congressman Paul Tonko from upstate New York has introduced a bill, and you had asked him for an update on his proposal. The language includes a federal bill restricting sports betting advertisements. So I'd love you to give us a little bit more color on that.
Yeah, so Congressman Tonko's been working on an initiative like this for the last year and a half or so, and right now what they're doing, well, I spoke to him on Sunday here locally, and he said that what they're doing right now is really fine-tuning the language in the bill so they can get it exactly as they intended for the sports betting community. And the two main things that he's looking to target is, number one, advertising, and two, the use of artificial intelligence by the sports books. So on the advertising side, he wants to target the words bonus, no sweat, odds boost, amongst other things in commercials and iPhone notifications that you see on your cell phone and whatnot. There are a few other states, and of course Congressman Tonko wants to regulate this at the federal level. There are a few states that do already have some laws on the books kind of limiting the sort of vocabulary that sportsbooks are allowed to use when it comes to their advertising. Ohio comes to mind, and even in Massachusetts, a lot of the DraftKings signage at Fenway Park and Gillette Stadium, for example, needs to include a 21 plus notification on all of those DraftKings logos and branding around these stadiums. So there has been some movement, at least on the state level, in regards to limiting some advertising in the sports betting industry. Now, Congressman Tonko wants to regulate that at the federal level. Now, on the artificial intelligence side, which I found most interesting, it would prohibit sportsbooks from tracking player habits and offering them personalized promotions, which would be fairly strict, I guess, because a lot of these sports books, in my conversations with them, view themselves as tech companies. So they do rely a lot on AI to generate their odds and their lines on certain markets. One other thing that Tonko's bill would do is prevent sportsbooks from using artificial intelligence for pricing on live betting, which, as we've seen in recent months, even the last year, just the sort of explosion in the popularity of live betting for these sports books. So, like I said off the top, I spoke to Congressman Tonko on Sunday, and they are fine-tuning the language in this bill, and they are expected to release this bill and push it forward, introduce it officially at a later point this year, he told me.
Great. One more topic here. The New York sports betting apps kicked off the new fiscal year with a $1.96 billion handle in the month of April. Obviously, you have Knicks and Rangers at play, but UConn going to the Final Four maybe had an impact on that. So the fourth most since the online New York sports betting market launched in January of 2022. So a big handle for the state of New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And, some might look at this and say, oh, well, they fell short of that $2 billion mark, which they've hit multiple times in the last 5-6 months. But yeah, still a pretty large number, especially for April, where, in the absence of the NFL season, and, we had Final Four weekend in April. So certainly a big number. Last April 2023, $1.55 billion in handle. So an increase year over year in April for handle in New York. FanDuel, $780.5 million in handle. They took 40% of the online market and generated $91 million in revenue. So another solid month for them. Overall, online revenue for the sportsbooks, $183.8 million in total online revenue. And the state collected $46.4 million in tax revenue, which, they certainly rely on quite heavily. Some large fiscal projections for New York as it pertains to sports betting. And, certainly the fiscal year kicks off in April. So a positive start for both the sports books and the state as well.
Great stuff there. Obviously, those two stories connected. Representative Tonko trying to make sure that all of the ducks are in a row with consumers as the sports books continue to be more successful. I got only like 30 seconds for you on the Preakness, but it seems like the Preakness has seen an increase in future bets this year, correct?
Yeah, so overall betting on the race last year hit a 3-year low. This year, as we're looking at the race tomorrow, the Preakness future wager had a 28% increase in betting this year compared to last year. So a positive sign as we head into tomorrow's race for the Preakness. We'll see how it shakes out. 8 horses, going to be a muddy track. I imagine handle will be probably a little bit lower than they were expecting, given the short field and a muddy track, which tends to have a negative impact on the overall betting volume. But we'll see as they head to the post tomorrow evening.
Great stuff, as always, by Jim Gazzale. You find him at Legal Sports Report on X.com and here on Newswire each and every week. Thanks, Jim. We'll be back with more after this.